Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mirmies, Mirdita, dobar dan, dobro jutro. Welcome to the first press conference of the Kosovo Specialist Chambers. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for being here. You all have received the program. At this press conference, Dr. Donlon will address you and talk about about the mandate, the past achievements, future milestones. But you will hear more from her. Before I give the floor to her, just to say that registrar in this court is one of the principals of the court, and it's the highest administrative authority, also in charge of the support judicial services. So we have limited time, as the next press conference is due to take place after us. And so let me introduce you, Registrar of the Specialist Chambers, Dr. Fidelma Donlon, who had been appointed to this position in April of this year.
Thank you, Alice. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As Registrar of the Kosovo Specialist Chambers, I would like to welcome you here today and also thank you for joining us. I'm particularly happy that you can be with us today, which for the Chambers is an important day, as it is our first day of entering into direct communications with you, the media, and also the general public. Moreover, it is an important day as today we will launch our webpage. I would also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank the many who supported the establishment of the Specialist Chambers during the preparatory phase, including the Kosovo government, EU-LEX, EU member states, third contributing states, and also the host state, the Kingdom of the Netherlands. As many of you, I'm sure, are aware that one of the key developments during the preparatory phase was the adoption of the constitutional amendment and the law on the Specialist Chambers and Specialist Prosecutor's Office by the Kosovo Parliament in August of 2015. When I was appointed registrar, I swore a solemn declaration to exercise my functions independently, impartially, and conscientiously. I exercise my functions and also manage the registry, upholding all of those principles. With my appointment as registrar of the Specialist Chambers in April, we entered into the implementation phase, with the key objective of building the capacity of the chambers to be in a position to conduct judicial proceedings. Today, I would like to focus my remarks to you on 4 general topics. Firstly, I'll touch upon the mandate and structure of the Specialist Chambers. Secondly, I would like to highlight some of the developments that have occurred in the implementation phase, namely in 2016, to give you an idea of the progress that we have made thus far. Thirdly, I would like to indicate upcoming milestones so that you have an understanding of the work that is ongoing by the Chambers and others to bring us to the point that we will be in a position to conduct judicial proceedings. And finally, I would like to make some remarks on our communication and outreach policy, and in addition, refer you to the new webpage of the Specialist Chambers. So moving forward to my first topic, the mandate and structure of the Specialist Chambers. Once again, as I'm sure many of you are aware, the Specialist Chambers are created as part of the Kosovo judicial system. The key mandate of the Chambers is to ensure secure, independent, impartial and fair criminal proceedings in any case that may arise from an indictment that will be filed by the Specialist Prosecutor. In terms of the jurisdiction of the court, The court has jurisdiction over grave transboundary crimes, war crimes, and crimes against humanity during the period 1998 to the end of 2000, and related to allegations stemming from the Council of Europe Parliamentary Report of 2011. The Chambers do have jurisdiction over crimes committed or commenced in Kosovo. In addition, the Chambers have jurisdiction over persons with Kosovo citizenship or over persons who have committed a crime against persons of Kosovo citizenship, wherever that crime may have been committed. I would like to highlight that as defined by law, the Chambers is empowered to deal with only individual criminal responsibility. This is not an institution designed to write a political history. It is a court of law, and by law, it is empowered to bring to trial persons who planned, instigated, ordered, committed, or otherwise aided and abetted in the planning or the commission of crimes within its subject matter jurisdiction. Moving now to the organisational structure of the Chambers. As many may know, the Chambers will be in each court level of the Kosovo court system. So there will be a specialist chamber in the Basic Court, in the Court of Appeals, in the Supreme Court, and additionally in the Constitutional Court. The law on the specialist chambers prescribes the qualifications that the judges of the chamber must possess. It sets out that judges are to be of high moral character, impartial, and exercising integrity at all times. Importantly, it is also specified by law that judges must possess the required qualifications to hold the highest judicial office in their respective states. In terms of the appointment of judges, once again I refer to the law and the fact that there is an independent selection panel composed of 2 judges with considerable international criminal law experience who are responsible for managing the process of selection and nominating the judges for appointment. That includes the future president of the specialist chambers, together with the judges for the roster of international judges. Moving on to the registry. The registry is responsible for overall administration as well as the provision of critical judicial support services and other affiliated functions to the chambers. To transform that into more specific detail, the registry is composed of 2 main divisions, the Division of Administration and also the Division of Judicial Support Services. In terms of the units in the Division of Judicial Support Services, we have a detention unit, we have a witness protection and support unit, we have a language services unit, we have a court management unit, we have a defence office, and we also have a victims participation office. I would like to highlight that obviously for the registry, one of our key objectives is to, within our mandate, ensure that the rights of any accused or suspects before the court are protected. With that in mind, our Defence Office is responsible for administering a list of qualified counsel who may appear before the specialist chambers in the future. In addition, for persons who may not have sufficient means to pay for their own counsel, i.e. people who are considered indigent, the Defence Office will administer a system of legal aid. Also of great importance at this juncture is the right of victims to participate in the proceedings. It is a priority for the registry that we ensure victims understand that they have a right to participate in the proceedings, and in addition, that we manage a transparent and clear procedure for victims to reach out to the court and ensure that their rights are protected. That's the key function of our Victims Participation Office. Next, I would like to touch upon developments in 2016. And as mentioned, I hope this will give you an indication of the progress that we have made in building the capacity of the chambers. Firstly, in February of this year, the interim host state agreement between the Kosovo government and the government of the Kingdom of the Netherlands came into force. The interim host state agreement allows and permits the registry to conduct all preparatory work required in the host state to facilitate any future trials. The interim host state agreement facilitates us being in the Netherlands pending the adoption of the host state agreement by the Parliament of the Netherlands, which will enable us to carry out and conduct criminal proceedings in the host state. As mentioned earlier, I was appointed Registrar of the Chambers in April of this year. By virtue of my appointment and also my authority in law, I was then in a position to adopt the approved staff rules of the institution and thereby issue contracts to staff to move and work in the Netherlands. As some of you may know, in April of this year, we commenced operations in the Netherlands as the Specialist Chambers. A next very critical development was the adoption of the budget of the Specialist Chambers and Prosecutor's Office by the EU Council in June of this year. This enables the chambers to carry out independent administration of the institution. I, as the registrar, have signed a grant agreement with the European Commission, which means that we are now empowered to manage the budget of the institution. In terms of capacity building, we have had 2 calls for contributions, otherwise known as public job vacancies, one in May of this year and another in August, which closed last week. We have received substantial numbers of applications for posts in the registry, and in the coming weeks the detailed selection process will be underway to determine candidates for interview and move forward with recruitments. Finally, in terms of developments this year, I would like to mention that in July, the call for nominations of judges was issued to member states as well as third contributing states. The call for nominations closed on the 9th of September of this year. Moving next to milestones ahead, which will give you, I hope, an idea of our ongoing work in terms of reaching our objective of having the capacity to manage proceedings in the near future. As I mentioned, we have closed a call for contributions for staff in accordance with the exchange of letters of 2014 signed by the former President of Kosovo and the High Representative. Individuals from EU member states and third contributing states are eligible to apply for positions in the specialist chambers. Also, as I mentioned, we have had considerable numbers of applications for over 100 positions. That means that my Human Resources Department, together with heads of units, are going to be extremely busy managing, as I said, the selection of candidates who, in accordance with job vacancies, are qualified for positions and subsequently will be called for interview. Again, we hope that progress will be made in the coming months so that we can build our staff capacity to enable us to expand and develop our workload. Next, in relation to the call for nomination of judges, as mentioned, the nomination process closed on the 9th of September. The independent selection panel that will manage the selection and nominate the appointment of the President and judges to the roster has been convened, and the selection process is moving ahead as set down in law. We hope that in the near future we will hear about the appointment of the President and also the other judges that will be appointed to the roster of international judges for the chambers. Following the appointment of the President and the judges to the roster, a next essential step will be the adoption of the rules of procedure and evidence of the specialist chambers. To touch upon the rules regulate the conduct of proceedings before the specialist chambers and will enshrine the principles set down in the European Convention of Human Rights, as well as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. I would also like to highlight for you that in accordance with the law adopted by the Kosovo Parliament, once the rules are adopted by the plenary of judges, namely a meeting of all the judges that are appointed to the roster, the rules will then be presented to the special chamber of the Constitutional Court for their review to ensure that the rules of procedure and evidence of the chambers are in compliance with the Constitution of Kosovo. As I briefly touched upon earlier, the registry is a key actor in ensuring that the rights of any suspects or accused before the chambers are protected. I noted that our Defence Office is responsible for administering a list of qualified counsel and also ensuring representation if an individual does not have the means to pay for their own defence. In the coming months, a key priority for my Defence Office is the finalisation of all internal documents related to counsel applying to be on the list of counsel that may appear before the specialist chambers. In addition, in terms of the Victims Participation Office, as I indicated, it is a priority for the registry that we have transparent and clear procedures so that victims can apply to the chambers to participate and also can receive any advice from the Victims Participation Office that they may need. Again, in terms of capacity building, both offices will be a focus in the coming months. I have also touched upon our outreach policy, which I will come back to later. However, in terms of priorities for the coming months, I would like to indicate to you that a key part of any outreach programme is building a network of support for the institution. That means working together with you, the media, journalists, as well as NGOs, civil society, victims participation groups and others. During the planning phase, we have concentrated on our outreach programme planning, and in the coming months we will be strengthening partnerships that we have already made, but seeking to make and solidify new partnerships. Finally, I'd like to mention that with all of those different work processes as well as recruitment processes ongoing, our aim is that in the first half of next year, the chambers will be in a position to commence judicial activity. Finally, I would like to once again return to our communication and outreach policy. A key philosophy underpinning our communications policy is transparency, and I obviously do not need to speak at length to you about the importance of transparent communication to both the media and the general public. Today, as mentioned, we open our communication channels directly with you as well as the public, And I would like to encourage you to be in contact with our Public Information and Communication Unit, and also to build partnerships with our head of unit. As also noted, since we started building the specialist chambers, we have concentrated on developing our outreach programme, as we see this as an essential component of conveying accurate and up-to-date information to affected communities, the region overall, together with the broader general public. As mentioned, we will be focusing on strengthening our partnerships with NGOs, civil society and other actors, as well as developing new partnerships with a view to holding an outreach event at some point early next year. In addition, in my role as registrar, I have visited Kosovo and intend to do so in the future, so that I can meet with relevant counterparts, media, and also speak with affected communities as appropriate. Next, I would like to refer you to our new webpage, which we hope will be visible momentarily.
Yes.
It is. So I take this opportunity together with you to launch our new webpage here today. The webpage is available in 3 languages, in Albanian, Serbian and English. And as you will see, the webpage contains all the constituent documents of the institution and other relevant documents. The webpage is a key tool for us in terms of communication, as well as the implementation of our outreach programme. With that in mind, it will be updated regularly, and it will be used by us to ensure that we can convey factual and legitimate information, not only about the institution, but also about any proceedings that take place before the chambers. At this point, I would like to introduce you to the head of our Public Information and Communications Unit, Avis Bennett.
Thank you.
Avis is a very experienced communication specialist who has lengthy experience in the region. So I have no doubt that in the coming hours and months she will be in contact with you, and hopefully we look forward to building strong partnerships with you and being able to deal with your queries and questions in the future. On that note, I will end my presentation, and I am more than happy to receive questions from you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Fidelma. Just before, of course, there will be plenty of questions, and we'll go to this. Just a technical note that there is a lot of information here. It's clear, and it's not easy to digest and process, so we do refer you that there is a lot of this information about the structure of the registry, about frequently asked questions. It's all on our webpage in these 3 languages, so it can immediately be helpful to you. The address is www.scp/ks.org. You also, when you leave these premises, you will have the law in all 3 language versions outside. It can be found on the web as well, but we were not that environment friendly at this moment. We actually know that it's sometimes helpful to have it also in front of you, as well as the constitutional amendment, biography of the registrar as well as the summary of our statement, which is supposed to be sent later as a press release. And now the floor will be open to your questions. Please, if you can introduce yourself, the media you represent. My colleague is going to come with you with a microphone, and we will be, here she is, and we will be taking questions, up to 3 questions all at once, and then answering. So I have seen the first hands were here.
Thank you. My name is Augustin Palokai. I work for Koha Ditore newspaper in Kosovo and the Jutarnji List in Croatia. This is a Kosovo court. It's just a chamber outside Kosovo. You said that you sworn in. Can you tell us before whom did you sworn in? And will the judges, because if it is everything in accordance with Kosovo law, will they have to sworn in front of Kosovo president? And at this moment, President of Kosovo happened to be a person whose name was mentioned in the report that led to the creation of this chamber. Thank you.
The next question behind, yes.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Vandenberg for Reuters and International Justice Tribune. I want to ask you to specify a bit about the judges and near future. Near future, is that more coming months, next year? And also you say in the first half of next year the chamber will be in a position, you hope, to commence judicial activity. Can you clarify a bit more this judicial activity? Do we mean that they could be ready to receive indictments, start a case? Thank
It's
you.
a clear question, thank you. And here, the one, the first one.
Thomas Verfuss, journalist for Justice. You mentioned the international presence within the Kosovo specialist chambers, and you also said that there are experienced international criminal law experts that participate in the selection process for the judges. Could you name some of those international criminal law experts that help during the selection process?
Thank you. Okay, now we'll answer these three questions, and then we'll come back to you. I think you will all have opportunity to pose the questions.
Thank you. First to our colleague from Koha Ditore. In relation to the declaration, by law, the registrar, the prosecutor, and also the president and judges of the court are, it's set down in law that we swear a solemn declaration, as opposed to being set down that before somebody. In terms of the declaration, we are appointed by the head of mission of EU-LEX, and then our declaration, which again, as I noted, is to exercise functions independently, impartially and conscientiously, is signed and witnessed. Moving to your follow-up question in relation to whether, and I think I've touched upon it, whether the judges, the president and the judges will swear a declaration. Again, I would refer to the law, because in the law it's specified that they will, and it also sets down the language of the declaration. Next to our colleague from Reuters, the first question related to my reference to the near future. As I indicated, the process of selection and nomination for appointment is managed by an independent selection panel. So that is something that I am not involved in. However, as I said, the process of selection has commenced, and when I refer to the near future, I cannot dictate when the selection panel will finish its work, but I would highlight that the nomination process completed on the 9th of September, and already the selection panel has commenced its work. So within the near future, I hope that we, together with yourselves, will hear about the appointments of the president and judges, and rest assured that once we are party to that information, we will certainly make the information available and obviously keep everything updated on our web page. With reference to the query about my comment in relation to judicial activity in the first half of next year, as I pointed out, there are a number of steps to be taken before we can exercise criminal jurisdiction in the Netherlands. Importantly is the adoption of the rules of procedure and evidence. So as noted, following the appointment of the judges, the adoption of the rules of procedure and evidence will be a priority, and subsequently their referral to the Constitutional Court for review. The Constitutional Court has 30 days to review the rules of procedure and evidence for compliance with the Constitution of Kosovo. So in terms of building capacity, we are building capacity and managing our milestones to be in a position to receive filings next year. In terms of an indictment, that is something that falls squarely within the mandate and authority of the prosecutor, who you will be meeting later. Finally, in terms of exercising criminal jurisdiction in the Netherlands, as I noted earlier, currently we work in the Netherlands in accordance with an interim host state agreement. The interim host state agreement allows us to do all preparatory work for managing trials in the future. It does not allow us to exercise criminal jurisdiction in the country. The host state agreement will allow us to exercise criminal jurisdiction in the Netherlands, and the host state agreement is currently before the Parliament of the Kingdom of the Netherlands for its ratification. So once the host state agreement is ratified, and obviously that is a matter for the Parliament of the Netherlands, we will then be in a position to carry out our jurisdiction in the country. Next to the question from Thomas in terms of the selection panel. The selection panel has been convened by the EULEX head of mission in accordance with the regulations set down in law. As far as I'm aware, the names of the panel are not public. So at this point in time, we can certainly perhaps follow up afterwards to see who may be best to contact with your question.
Okay, the next
Thank
set of
you.
questions. The first one was here.
Thank you very much. Jo Biddle from Agence France Presse, AFP. I wanted to ask, I'm sure this is public and I should probably know it, what's the budget for the court? You mentioned that it's been passed and that got you up and working. How many judges are you actually going to be appointing out of the 100 positions? Or is that separate to the 100 positions for your registry office? And just more generally, in much broader terms, this is a new international court being established from ground zero. Could you tell us some of the greatest challenges you've had so far in getting to this point today? Thank you.
Thank you. And then here, question.
Hi, I'm Mike Corder from Associated Press, AP. I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit on the witness protection unit that you will have, what powers they will have. And the other thing, I'm not quite sure you answered my colleague's question about whether people will be sworn in front of the President of Kosovo.
Okay, thank you. Was there some here, somebody? No? Yes, yes.
Eva Vukušić from the Balkan Investigative Reporting Network. You mentioned victims' participation, and I understand that the rules have not yet been adopted, but can you just tell us a little bit more about what this participation may entail? Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, this is it for this round of questions, and some are more than one, but no problem.
Thank you. In relation to the budget, as I mentioned, by EU Council decision, in June of this year, the Member States approved a budget of 29 million euros for the first year of operations of the Specialist Chambers and the Specialist Prosecutor's Office. In relation to your query about how many judges, yes, I should indicate that the 100 positions I referred to are staff positions, not judges. In terms of the number of judges, again, as indicated, there is an independent selection panel that will be reviewing all applications and deciding who will be selected for appointment. In terms of the numbers, what you will see in the law for this institution is that the only full-time position is the President of the Chambers, and all others will be appointed to a roster of judges. There is no specific number of judges set down in law, but what is set down is that the required number to ensure effective and efficient proceedings will be appointed to the roster. To indicate judges will be called to serve as required. So for example, when we reach the point that a trial chamber is to be convened, the President will call on judges who have been appointed to the roster. In relation to your question about building the chambers from ground zero and the challenges, or the greatest challenges that we have encountered, I would say that overall in terms of building a new institution, frequently everything can be a challenge because you start with very limited staff. So the key is to actually recruit the qualified staff that can bring to bear planning in a process. So it's drawing upon professional skills as well as experience to plan an institution for the future. And that means in planning, we have to be obviously in our plans quite responsive and be able to react to developments in the future. So we are now, as I indicated, we've had 2 calls for contributions. So the previous court planning team started at 1 person and grew to 15 people. And only last week we have reached the number of staff that we have, which is 30. So against the progress we have achieved, I would say possibly one of the biggest challenges has been to recruit the resources needed to increase our workload. And in addition, I think probably one of the greatest challenges, which thankfully my small team have delivered upon, is asking people to multitask and do many jobs at the one time until we actually do recruit people into positions. But thankfully, as I said, it's a challenging process, it's dynamic, but I think due to our combined professional skill sets as well as previous experience, we are happy to say that we are reaching the progress levels that we had expected. Next to the questions from Associated Press in relation to the Witness Protection and Support Office in the Registry. The Witness Protection and Support Office is mandated to conduct and implement any security measures that may be required for witnesses or other persons who are at risk on account of their testimony, in addition to counselling and other support services that may be required for more vulnerable witnesses, be that individuals who have been the victims of gender-based violence or otherwise. In relation to the protective measures that the Chamber is empowered by law to use, obviously the judges of the court, as is similar in many other tribunals, as well as is the case in Kosovo courts, the judges can make orders to have voice distortion, face distortion, testimony by video link, or whatever other measures they deem are required to ensure the integrity as well as the well-being of witnesses. To follow up on the previous question that your colleague asked in relation to swearing in, the answer is in accordance with the law on the specialist chambers, which is a lex specialis law, that there is not a provision that judges and others swear an oath before the President of Kosovo. However, the solemn declaration to be sworn is recited in the law. Next to the question on victims' participation, and I think the point was if I could elaborate a little on that. As indicated, victims of crimes that fall within the subject matter jurisdiction of the chambers do have a right to participate in the proceedings. So as a first step, we are conscious that victims are aware of that right, because as you see, the law is a very detailed text. So it's important for us as a first step to reach out and communicate that information, which we will be doing by virtue of our webpage as well as other activities in the region. The next step then is obviously the ability to coordinate with our chambers in terms of victims who may, once they are aware of their right to participate, want to participate in the proceedings. Now, we expect to manage this process in the next number of months, which will mean that individuals who are interested to reach out, there will be a means for them to communicate with our Victims Participation Office. Subsequently, there will be a determination, most likely a judicial determination, by who actually is a victim, and then how victims can participate in the proceedings. But by law, rather than individual participation in proceedings, the office will coordinate and the registry will manage legal representation for the victims so that they can participate and understand what is happening in terms of the proceedings. And again, as indicated, this is a priority for the coming months. Our head of office will be commencing work with us in the coming week, I believe, so that you can anticipate there will be further developments, and we will keep you posted again by means of updating the webpage. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think we are coming to the last round of questions because there is another press conference to attend. So here, and okay, let's see if there's anybody after that.
Stephanie Vandenberg again from Reuters. Just a quick follow-up on the victims' participation. Is there any provision in the law or plans for reparations for victims as part of this representation?
Here.
Inés from Eurotransit from Spain. I would like to ask why this tribunal, which is ruled by the Kosovo law, is located here in Netherlands and not in Kosovo.
And is there a third question? Yes, there is.
Hello, this is Weber Kranz from Reuters Television. I have a question. We know that in ICTY already some Kosovo people, like former Prime Minister, have been tried and released. So what is the difference between this court and the ICTY, which has already tried people from Kosovo? So what's the need of another tribunal for Kosovo? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's a frequent question. And if there is just one more, yes, and then we will conclude.
Stéphanie Maupas from Le Monde. The investigation started 5 years ago, and I just would like to know if there is already witnesses which have been protected by the tribunal or by the investigative team.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is the last set of questions. Yeah, for the, if you're ready.
Thank you. Firstly, a question in relation to reparations. As provided for in law, that subject to a final decision of the Kosovo chambers, persons can go to Kosovo courts to seek reparations. Next, in relation to a question on location, as you will see that in the exchange of letters signed by the former President and the High Representative, the exchange of letters was ratified in 2014. It was agreed that sensitive proceedings could be located in a host state, and then subsequently negotiations took place with the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which is the host state. So currently we are building our capacity here, but also looking towards Kosovo and what capacity we may have there in the future. In relation to the question about the difference between ICTY and the specialist chambers. Firstly, I would say in legal terms, one of the critical differences is obviously that ICTY is a court created pursuant to Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, so it is a UN institution, whereas the specialist chambers are part of the Kosovo judicial system, and the institution has been created by adoption of the legislation and constitutional amendment by the Kosovo Parliament. So in character, there is a critical difference. In addition to that, if you examine the actual temporal jurisdiction, so the period of time that the institutions have jurisdiction over, ICTY has jurisdiction for crimes committed during the conflict, whereas the temporal jurisdiction of the specialist chambers is from the 1st of January 1998 to the end of 2000, which is a different temporal jurisdiction than ICTY. So in summary, they are some of the key differences between the two institutions. Moving finally, there was a question in relation to the investigation. As I noted earlier, the investigation of any alleged crimes is the mandate of the specialist prosecutors, so I would indicate that any questions in relation to the investigation are better posed to the prosecutor in the next press conference. Thank you.
Which is just a nice lead for the future events and activities here. I would like to thank you all for your interest. Conclude this session. I'm looking forward to our future cooperation. As Fidelma has pointed out, the partnership with you is really crucial. Also having in mind the distance from the Kosovo region, and you are keen spreading the objective information to the public. Let me also remind you about the material which is outside, and some refreshments. And that's it for this time. Thank you. Faleminderit. Hvala.
Thank you very much.